Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Jaysen Sutton. Jaysen is the founder of the Corporate Law Academy, the largest community for aspiring lawyers with over 50,000 active users. After completing his undergraduate law degree at the London School of Economics, Jaysen went on to the University of Cambridge to complete his master's in corporate law. So, a very, very warm welcome, Jaysen.
Thanks, Rob. Really glad to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And I mean, what you've been doing for the legal community is fantastic. And I can't wait to dive into all of that. But before we do, we have our customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the reality hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality?
Let's go for a 2, I would say. Funny, so before I started my training contracts, I used to watch Suits a lot as a way of feeling like I was preparing for starting my training contract. It scared me, to be honest, because it seemed, you had to be this super confident person, and it seems like a really intense environment with big partners. Now, why is it a 2? Probably because, it shows the best parts of law without all the, sitting down, looking at paper, doing lots of sometimes administrative tasks. And I'm glad to say that the intense partners that are shown in Suits, from what I remember, we didn't really see that at my firm.
There we go. So I think you've justified your 2 answer very well, and we'll move swiftly on. So let's start at the beginning, Jaysen. Would you mind telling us a bit about your background and your career journey, including why you left the law?
Yeah, of course. So I am half Mauritian. My mum moved to the UK when she was young. She was born in Mauritius. I had a tricky family background, which I won't go into too much detail, but it's something that I'm kind of working through myself at the moment, and it's relevant because I think it affected my own legal journey and the knowledge I knew when I started my career. So like you said in the beginning, I did my undergrad at LSE. I did a master's after that. And I started at Weil, which is a US-based private equity law firm. I lasted about 4/5 months. It's a very short amount of time. And there's a lot to dig into there in terms of why did I leave the legal profession. I think I struggled, to be honest. I had doubts before I started at Weil. And every time those doubts came up, I just put it to the side and tried not to think about it too much. And that was a problem because I think my decision to pursue a legal career was largely driven by factors that now I see were kind of based on the notions of success I had and the notions of prestige and the value of money, and the fact that I'd spent a long time studying law, and therefore I thought, okay, I have to commit to this. Weil was a good firm. I can honestly say I never had bad things to say about the firm. And I think if I did have a bad experience, I would be honest about it. But they actually were a good firm to be in. But I struggled. I think I was young and I didn't know how to ask for help when I was struggling. The US firm environment was also very much you learn as you go, which again was difficult when you're someone that doesn't really know how to kind of ask for help or ask for feedback or navigate just the law firm environment. So I got to a point where I was, waking up dreading to go into work, and I couldn't relax on the weekends because I was just exhausted. And that was a really big signal for me that, this isn't the right career to be in. I would say it wasn't as easy as that, though, because you're kind of, once you get offered the training contracts, you feel like you should stay in and at least make it past the 2 years. For me, I think I'm very much the person that once I had that idea in my head, it was just a case of, okay, this isn't the right career for me. How should I leave the profession? And again, credit to the firm. They handled my departure really well, and they didn't make me feel like a failure or like I'd done something wrong. They were really supportive in wanting me to stay. And it was a hard journey after I left, but Yeah, thankfully it's been a few years since then, and I've spent a lot of time working out what happens there, because I think you spend so much time preparing for one career, and then when you leave, it's a big shock to the system, and it's, there's questions about your identity and, who am I now if I'm not this person that's going into law? And yeah, this is something that's quite interesting based on the people I talk to at the moment.
Yeah, no, and thank you for being so open with that. And it's great that you also speak positively, of the firm and how that was supported. But, it ultimately wasn't necessarily the right career for you. And I think, you did what was best for you. And I really commend you for that. And during your legal career, Jaysen, how have you led a life based on values, and why is this so important to you?
Yeah, so this is only something that's come to my attention recently. I would say in the past, if someone told me, or you even used the word values, it would have felt really wishy-washy and kind of motivational speaker type thing.
Yeah.
And I've been on this journey recently, which is related to the TCLA and the business I'm running now, which is what kind of business do I want to run, and where do I want to go, and what's important to me along the way. And that's a really hard question when you have a business, because you can decide I'm sure there are a million different directions you can go in, and you don't know what's the right direction to go in. And there are like a million different concerns that you have at the same time. And for me, I've just found values to be a way of simplifying the decision-making process. So funnily enough, I spent some time with this Buddhist teacher actually on a Monday morning. And it was just on this question of what am I working towards, or why am I working, and what am I trying to get from it? And the line I've come down to, which I'll be honest, it sounds very simplified and motivational, but it really sums up what makes me happy in the day-to-day, which is bringing joy to the people around me. And when I turn to values that are important to me, it comes down to three things. So speaking the truth. Second is excellence. So that's more in the work context, trying to deliver on excellence. And the third thing is this sense of inner harmony. So just being at peace with the decisions I make. And I think now that's really starting to see itself within the business and this community focus that we have, and just trying to be honest about, whether it's in the legal profession, the good sides and the not so good sides, or even what it's like to run a business.
Yeah. No, and again, thank you for being so open around that and showcasing, because I'm a big advocate for values as well. And I don't believe, they're wishy-washy. And I love how you've stuck true to your values throughout your career. And I guess that leads nicely on to, the Corporate Law Academy, or as we all know in the industry, TCLA, because you are the sole founder of the Corporate Law Academy, the largest community for aspiring lawyers with over 50,000 active users. Congratulations. That is not an easy feat to have done. But how did you go about creating TCLA, and what was your inspiration behind that?
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. It's funny, I think people often think that I spotted this big gap in the market and I left a while to start this business, and I had this fantastic idea. Really, it wasn't like that. It was, I left a legal career and I wasn't in a good state, to be honest. I had left this career that I'd spent such a long time working towards. And the question was, what am I going to do next? And I had always wanted to start a business. It was reflected in the things I'd tried to do before I began a legal career. So I thought, this is the time to do it. And I'd spent so much time learning what I need to learn to get a training contract. And, this is information that I learned over time, which I didn't have access to before. And so then the rationale was, okay, why not just start something with the knowledge I have at the moment? And really it's evolved over time from there. So the fact that we have a community was never the plan initially. It was just, it'd be nice. This is a nice way of sharing my ideas. And now community is 100% the focus of the business. So we quickly realized that community is the most valuable thing. It's the thing that's going to see us into the future. And it's the thing that gives us the most joy. And really the philosophy of TCLA is that it doesn't matter where you're based or located or your background, we want you to be able to access good ideas. And, I found being able to access ideas has really shaped the direction I've taken in my own life. And that wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for the internet. And so really the fact that we have a free forum, it's just about sharing great ideas to other people as well.
Yeah, and I love how you talk about community, because it's something I harp on about all the time. And, one of the reasons that, we've been doing the Legally Speaking podcast for so long and, having great, incredible people like yourself come on the show, because, it's there's a real need for community. Community building is definitely the way. And even when people say to me, as you know, I run KC Partners as well, which is our sort of, most people said, that's just legal recruitment. I said, no, we're legal talent solutions focused on community. We're not just interested in doing one placement with you and then hi and bye. We do a placement with you, not for once, but for life, and maintain that relationship through community building, through careers. So I love that that's the mantra of TCLA. And I know it is, and you live, eat and breathe it and showcase that in everything you do with the events, the collaborations, just your reputation. So again, congratulations. And I know it's not easy, getting to where you've got to, because there's a lot of things along the way. And with that, what have you learned and hope others will from forming TCLA?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess in the legal context, what I hope for aspiring lawyers is that they can make more informed decisions. So if we give them the access to information on whether it's what a legal career is like, both the good sides and the not so good sides, they can better make decisions to work out if this is the right career for them. But then also, as they're just trying to become excellent lawyers, or even more broadly, just, how can I manage my time better, or how can I be more organized? Really, I see TCLA as just a way for me to, share these really good ideas that I've discovered that I apply in my own life. And I feel very lucky that, I have coaches and mentors now that has unlocked so much for me. And yeah, I want to be able to share that to other people, which is why I often do the kind of LinkedIn copywriting type posts, because it's just a way of sharing these really good ideas that I hope other people get value from as well. So yeah, that's within the context of the legal community. And then I guess more broadly, it's the kind of business focus at the moment is working out how can I create a business where I'm enjoying it now. And I don't know if you relate to this as well, but like when you run a business, it often feels like it could burn down at any moment. And even if you're, 45 years on, or, you're in a good place and you're not struggling to just set up at the moment, but also anymore, that concern of, what could happen in the future. Is another good business going to come in and it collapses? Is there something you haven't thought about that comes in and affects, everything? And I think often they're really irrational thoughts, but it's very much there. So my way of kind of reconciling that problem is if I can focus on building a business now where I'm just really enjoying my day to day, then I'm not waiting for, 5-10 years at a time. I'm not waiting for like an exit or to sell the business. It's really just giving me meaning, and worst comes to the worst, say something happens, I'll have enjoyed the process anyway, and I'll have delivered joy to the people around me as well.
And that's so important, because you have to enjoy the journey, because there are ups and downs. And, what is it? Sort of 70-80% of people fail their first round interviews. 70-80% of startup businesses fail. So, it's so true. And then when you go past that sort of, if you are a few years in, it's a case of, anyone can be successful. It's far harder to stay successful. And so you talk about there, the competition, the way, so there's always challenges or opportunities, whichever way you want to look at it, when it comes to entrepreneurship and running businesses. But, you've done a tremendous job. And, I really want to kind of double down on community, because it's something you and I have a shared passion for. So, why do you think it's significant for aspiring lawyers to have a sense of community as they go into the profession? Because I don't necessarily think that existed in years gone by with previous legal professionals.
No, exactly. And yeah, it's very relevant now, because we are just launching our community for future trainees. So normally TCLA has been focused on people before the training contract, whereas now we're focused on future trainees and then trainees and associates. And why is a community important? I think because of the ability to communicate online now, it gives you a platform to realize that you're not alone. And I think that is the most powerful thing for me. So it's very easy, I think, when you're struggling or having a challenging time and you don't have anyone in your network to communicate with, or you just find it hard to communicate with, it can be really easy to believe you're completely alone in feeling a certain way, or really struggle, or not have questions, but you don't feel comfortable or able to ask those questions. And so I think the beauty of a community is you suddenly realize you're not alone. You have this group of people that have the same concerns as you, and that makes you suddenly feel like your problems aren't alone and only facing you, and that can really take a lot of the pressure off. So I think that's a big part of it, and I've kind of joined communities in both the business sense and also obviously setting up TCLA, and I'm a big believer in having this place or group of people where you can just turn to when you need help, or just talk to day as you're trying to battle difficult things. It makes the process so much more enjoyable. And then I also think it's a powerful way to try to reach the goals that you're pursuing. So, especially in the community that we're looking after, you have these personalities who, they just want to be, they really care about self-improvement and they're trying to better themselves. And it's hard to do that alone, but it's much easier where you have a community to be accountable to ask questions to get really good advice from people who have been there and done that. So yeah, that's a couple of the reasons why I am just very big on community.
Yeah, and again, I think that trickles down nicely to what else I wanted to talk to you about, because I know it's something that's super important, is authenticity. Because, as they always say, be yourself because everyone else is taken. Do you believe, being authentic is a quality for aspiring lawyers, even barristers need to have? And how do you champion being authentic?
It's really hard, to be honest, because I think I definitely, when I was going through the process, I thought I had to present a self that seemed very confident and seems like I knew what I was talking about. There was no weaknesses inside. And that was the reason I did that is I thought there is like one way to be a lawyer, and that's the kind of person I should be. And that's probably where Suits comes relevant there to, trying to be that confident Mike Ross or like Harvey Specter type personality. At the same time, I think the problem with presenting that kind of front is you kind of feel like you need to always be that type of person. And if you are finding things difficult, there can be a big tension there towards like feeling one way inside and trying to present a certain self on the outside. So that's, why I'm a big believer in authenticity, because I think it is actually more powerful. It helps to, if you're vulnerable, it helps to bring people closer together and you can connect better with the person in front of you. I would say as an aspiring lawyer, it is very difficult to do that because there are many concerns about, okay, I want to present a certain impression. I'm in a new environment. How can I be honest about my weaknesses? I would just suggest that it's something that they may want to just try in an environment. So one thing, for example, I did recently is I was having a bad week and I tried to test that by just being honest with people up front in saying something like that. And it was remarkable to me how many people were very warm, and it felt like I connected better with that person on the other side because I was being honest and not trying to present like everything was okay. So yeah, I think as an aspiring lawyer that being authentic can really help you longer term in staying in a career where you feel you can be who you are rather than going and presenting a certain self that you're not.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important point. And I just think back to, how many people over the years who have basically pretended, are you happy? And they're just, they're holding up a mask because, you're not feelings, there's no safe spaces. There's no space to be able to have that outlet where maybe it'll just be seen as a sign of weakness. But, from any weakness comes strength if you get through it. So, I think it's so great that you're kind of leading the baton with this initiative and, gearing the next generation to say it's okay, because a person who never made a mistake never existed. A person who never had a bad day never existed. So, it's all just part of the cause. And actually, we can come together and embrace authenticity in the right way. And I'm all for that for the legal profession. I think the more we do that, it will have a more positive knock-on effects. I think we'll see higher retention levels within law firms. We'll see happier associates. We'll see less burnout. We'll see less of the issues that we see in modern day legal industry. So thank you for highlighting that and really showcasing that you're behind it. Time for a quick break from the show. Are you a legal aid practitioner in England and Wales, specializing in civil or criminal legal aid matters? If you are, this message is for you. As a legal aid solicitor, you don't have time to waste on legal aid case management software that doesn't work to your needs. That's why Clio has developed a quicker, more accurate and affordable solution for legal aid solicitors in England and Wales. It could save you hours in your month, particularly when it comes to end of month invoicing and claims to the legal aid agency. To see how it all works, visit clio.com/UK/legal aid. That's Clio, CLIO.com/UK/legal aid. Now back to the show. So let's go back to TCLA then, because TCLA is full of valuable guidance. So we were even talking off air before we came on the show, how people have landed training contracts off the back of the content, and it's almost word for word perfect in terms of what to expect. So that's, again, testament to what you have done and what you have produced. So including how to sell yourself is some of the guidance as well. What is your perspective on that? And do you think students need to celebrate their achievements?
Yeah, I think it's a common issue I encounter when I speak to aspiring lawyers, which is that they feel a sense that they should dumb down their experiences, and that it will come across as too arrogant to celebrate the hard work that they put into achieving something. And the way I respond to that with is always the fact that, a recruiter is reviewing thousands of applicants, and if you don't sell yourself, to be honest, you won't stand out, and there'll be no one that's going to say, look, although this person didn't explain all the hard work they put into their experience, this is all the other stuff that they did to get there. There's no one that's going to be rooting for you in that way unless you do it for yourself. So, I'm a huge believer that we don't give ourselves enough credit for the hard work we put into something. And it's not being arrogant if you did put hard work into something to then, get a certain achievement. There are certainly, I think, rare situations where I encounter an aspiring lawyer that maybe is arrogant, but actually the vast majority of times it's someone who feels like they would be arrogant if they saw themselves more, but actually they're not really talking about, how much effort did they put into something, what did it lead to? And often, I'd say the biggest turning point for me, or the advice I give in these types of situations, is to be incredibly specific. So if I give an example, a common one is a public speaking type experience, and someone might say, I presented to a group of people in a room and I received excellent feedback. And if I read that, it doesn't stand up to me, to be honest. It's something that anyone could say. But if you said, initially I was terrified of public speaking. I decided to lead on a topic to discuss mental health. I spoke in front of 50 people. The feedback I received was X, Y, and Z, and this led me to do Y. And now I do regular public speaking engagements to improve my confidence. Now, that's a really, really kind of rough example, but hopefully you can see the difference in the two examples, which is being very specific about the effort you put into something can really transform the way it's viewed, even if it's exactly the same experience. And it's also just being honest. I think sometimes people think that to sell yourself is to exaggerate your experiences. If anything, I think it's the other way. It's just being more honest about what you actually did.
Yeah, and I love that example because it is an honest and authentic one. And the other thing to sort of pick out there, it's almost, turning a weakness into a strength. If you're not confident in public speaking, that's a development area. And actually, in that example, you showcased how you're working on it, the tangibles, the outcome, the benefit, and what that led to further down the line. Because people always say to me, "Oh, I can't put any weaknesses in applications. That's going to make me look really bad." It's like, well, no, you've just given a great example about how you can, and actually from that authenticity piece, because folks, listen in. I'll repeat this twice. There is no such thing as the perfect candidate. There is no such thing as the perfect candidate, right? So just remember that. And actually, what you just said there, Jaysen, was absolutely gold. So definitely rewind, replay that, listen to that, folks, particularly when you're looking at your applications, because you absolutely can turn negatives into positives. So let's stick on the theme of applications then. So whilst applying for vacation schemes and training contracts, many students do attempt to craft the perfect answers. So as I said before, I don't believe there is the perfect candidate, but what would be your advice to that?
Yeah, so I think, there's a lot that can be said to writing better applications. So we review applications as part of TCLA. And one thing to keep in mind is we always have comments on an application, even the best applications we see. And as you said, there are always things that can be identified and reviewed. If I think about perhaps the more unusual types of feedback we give, or leveling up from a good application to a great application, a big part of that for me is the quality of the writing. And when I say the quality of the writing, it's actually the opposite to what many people think, which is, using big words and complex phrases, which I think many people develop at university stage. It's rather the opposite. So how can you say what you need to say using very simple language, short sentences, just so I can read it and I have absolutely no doubt what you're trying to say. And if I was writing an application now, the advice I would give is to basically open a blank piece of paper and just start by writing something down, because I think part of the biggest problems with applicants is they focus on perfecting the application before they started. So I would start just by being as honest as possible on a blank piece of paper and expect your first 4 or 5 drafts to be terrible. And I write a personal newsletter now, and I promise you that never changes. It's always going to be terrible to start with. And the beauty of an application comes when you edit the writing and you delete unnecessary words and phrases, you move things around. Usually I would leave a gap between starting to write an application and the editing process, and every time you edit it. So every time you come back to the document, you'll see it with a new perspective. You'll realize there's ways to move things around. And I think that's a better way to do it than just sitting down for a full day, trying to just write word for word what you're trying to say. So that's one piece of advice on the quality of the writing. In terms of how else you can improve your application, I would say most applications I see, or when I used to review them, people write things that they've adapted based on things they've read online or something someone said a long time ago. And I do understand it when you're starting the law firm application process. The first point of call is often, okay, what kind of benchmark can I have? And you look at a past successful application, or you've read someone's motivations online. For me, the best applications are when the person has done the hard work to actually ask themselves quite deep-rooted questions about their motivations. So, why do I really want to be a lawyer? Where is that coming from? What would I enjoy about it? And then keep asking yourself why until you can't ask yourself why anymore. And you will go many layers deeper from the kind of surface level answer. So, for example, if your initial answer was because I'm interested in business, why are you interested in business? Because I like problem solving. Why are you interested in problem solving? And keep digging deeper, and you'll get to an answer that I would say is more closer to you and also more unique from the perspective of a recruiter. I'd say in combination of those things, those are two, points that are more deep-rooted that I think can substantially change the quality of an answer.
Yeah, and I love that. Really, really know your why. I think it's so important. And you gave some really great practical examples once again. So let's talk about mindset then. There is the idea of having a positive mindset in conjunction with a legal career. What type of mindset should aspiring lawyers have?
That's a good question. I would be hesitant to prescribe a mindset to aspiring lawyers, just because I think there is so much variety out there. I guess for me, if I think about mindset, if you can, as much as possible, try to come from a place where you're trying to be true to yourself. That's a really big part to me. So coming from a place where you feel you're making decisions that are aligned with the things that kind of give you a sense of peace or feel right for you. That's one way to think about it. I am a big believer in the growth mindset, and I don't know if, for me, it's tricky to know if it's something that people develop over time. But if you aren't familiar with the concept, so it's a book by Carol Dweck, and the idea is like very simplified. It's the idea that you can kind of learn anything if you put the hard work in, rather than believing it's based on the traits you were born with. And when that clicked for me, that was really powerful, because I believe, in my business now, that in theory I can actually learn anything. That doesn't mean, I'm going to, or I have, some things are going to take a really long time to learn. But it's this idea that suddenly things are so much more in your grasp than you otherwise thought was possible. So yeah, that kind of growth mindset, I would say, is a thing for aspiring lawyers to think about, because I think quite often they decide their futures based on the kind of skills and knowledge they have right now. And if you do that, you can sometimes limit yourself. So you can say, I'm not a confident person now, therefore I'm not suited to a legal career because I'm just not a confident person. You can sometimes shift that and think about the idea that, okay, I might not be confident now, but I can learn how to be confident. It's just a skill I need to get better at over time. And I would just suggest taking some time to think about that. I wouldn't necessarily say, you need to adopt this, but just opening yourself up to the idea that you will change so much in the future, and it's okay to lean into that.
Yeah, no, really good advice. And thanks for sharing that, Jaysen. And let's talk then about law firms, because at a number of US and Magic Circle law firms, there's a culture of compounding and consistently producing a high standard of work. Do you think this is the route to burnout? And if so, why?
Good question. I would say that compounding and consistency are two words that I am a big fan of. So, when you said both of them, that's a big part, I think, of what leads to success. So compounding, the idea of doing something small and showing up every day, and over time that will lead to huge successes over time, because you've just taken the small steps initially. Now, the question of what leads to burnout is an interesting one. I think since I wrote this article on why I left law, actually quite a number of trainees have reached out to me, and we've had these like one-to-one confidential calls where we have to run it after hours and they're still at the law firm, and they go to a private meeting room and we have a conversation about, just often they relate to the article I wrote, which is how I was feeling and why I left my training contract. And I think often they are getting this sense of burnout. Now, I would say for me, there are many factors that factor into burnout, and I would say I'm not an expert on the topic. For me, I would say it's quite often feeling trapped, and I think that's a huge cause of it. So you're often working these long hours without break, and there's this feeling that you can't say anything because it would detriment your future career prospects if you did. And for me, that's one of the biggest causes, because I think often in other organizations, if you had the scope to say, I'm struggling with my capacity right now, I need to take some time off, then that could be a big mitigating factor. But I think within law, there is this deep sense that you cannot say that. You can't be open about your weaknesses. There may be mental health programs, but also realistically, if I open up to my supervisor about how I'm really feeling, are they going to see me as someone that could become a future associate and partner at the firm? And I think this is really dangerous because it stops people, going back to the authenticity point, they have to then keep it in, which I did, which means that they come home from work and it all comes out because they've been keeping it in all day. And also it leads them to feel they have to carry on when it's not healthy to do so. And yeah, I do feel in the working context, there is often this idea that's still carried on from a long time ago, which is that it's normal to put yourself through so much pain at work. And I'm very much against that philosophy. And I think it's difficult to change within a legal environment because of the clients, but I do think it will change over time. From the context of law firms, I think then a solution for me is providing the means for trainees and associates to speak up and be able to open up if they're struggling. And I think that's, for me, perhaps one of the solutions to some of the problems with burnout.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Having that open communication and, openness where people can, I think is super important. So let's stick with training contracts, because training contracts are very competitive to obtain, as we know. So what tips would you give to someone just starting out in the profession?
Yeah, I think it's really hard when you're starting out, even if you go to TCLA, because there is so much advice and it's really overwhelming to know where to start. As I say, you come onto our forum, there are hundreds of threads and different topics of people at different stages. And I think that was probably one problem I didn't have when I was starting up with. There wasn't as much information available. So then the question is, for me, how do you make the best use of your time to get you closer to that goal of getting a training contract? And I would just, as much as possible, try to simplify it. So if you break down the process into, okay, the first step is working out which firm is right for me. And maybe the second step is writing applications to those firms, then interviews, then vacation schemes / the training contract. And once you've worked out this goal you're working towards, I would then work out what's the highest leverage activity or the best use of my time to work towards that goal. So if the goal, for example, is to get more interviews, the danger I see quite often is I'll speak to candidates and they're working through courses, even our courses. And the problem with that is it feels productive because you're learning, but it's not necessarily moving the needle towards what you want to get, which is interviews. And often actually the best way at that stage is to just write more applications to firms you're interested in. And that's what I would spend 90% of my time doing. So yeah, my kind of big tip there is to take the time to kind of plan a structure for what you're trying to achieve, whether that's, okay, what stage am I at? Am I still trying to work out what firm is important to me? And then work out what activities to take that's going to get you closer to that goal. So for example, with that one, maybe it's speaking to lots of different firms, attending events, speaking to as many people in the profession to gather as much information as possible. So my biggest advice there is to just be wary of consuming lots of content and try to work out what steps are going to get you closest to the goal that you're trying to achieve. And I appreciate it's not easy, and I would just be nice to yourself in this process because it's a long journey and it can take many cycles. And for many people, they stop at a point where they could have just carried on a bit longer, and it's possible that could have led to successes. So it requires a lot of resilience and persistence in going through the process. So please find an environment where you can just support yourself in doing that. I would say that the kind of stats that people tend to connect with is that the average age of a qualified solicitor is, I think it was 29 years old the last time I saw it. And if you're just starting out in your journey and say you're a university graduate, on the younger side of your journey, that can be quite reassuring to know that people do take time. And just because you didn't get an offer in the first cycle, it doesn't mean that you're not doing something right. And yeah, overall, just seeing this process as a system where you just need to learn skills over time. You're going to start off really bad, and that's okay. That's how we all start these new skills. And then things like writing applications, getting better at interviews, learning how to network, these are all skills that you can get better at. It just means a case of spending more time working out how to do those things. And just to go back to my other point, I would just try, and this is really easy for me to say, but try not to discount yourself based on the stage you're at right now. So I say that because I did this, and I would always tell myself, okay, I'm this kind of person, so I'm not going to be that confident person, or I can't do public speaking, or, you know, I'll never be able to be in this room with law firm partners and have a conversation with them. I would just say that please don't discount yourself based on the stage you're at right now. So you never know what the future is going to hold, and it's quite possible, it's very possible that you will get there. It just does take time.
Yeah, really well said. And I love that you talk about just getting on with it, you know, because ultimately, as I always say on this show, you know, done is better than perfect, because perfect never gets done. And the more you do, the better you'll get, the more you'll learn along the way. So yeah, love that. And when we spoke prior to recording, you mentioned you're keen to help bridge the gap between getting a contract, training contract, and starting one. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so we are launching this on Friday/Monday, I said, depending on how quickly I can record the next welcome video. But really so our focus in the past has been to provide support to aspiring lawyers pre-training contracts. Then at the start of this year, we just had many one-to-one calls with future trainees, and we published this survey, which was went out to 300 future trainees, and we asked them questions on, you know, how are they feeling at the moment? What are they worried about if they do have concerns? And to be honest, that was really eye-opening. I suspected that future trainees could do with more support, just based on my own journey. But I think I've only recently realized that we could do something about that. So the purpose of this future trainee community, you know, it's completely free. It's just on the TCLA forum. It's a private forum. So the idea is we don't want you to feel worried about, you know, law firms checking to see what you're saying. Like, we want you to feel really comfortable. And what we're going to do is bring in trainees, associates, and partners to answer questions that you have. We're going to run webinars for you based on the skills that you'd like to develop, whether that's, you know, how can I be a more resilient future trainee, or more practically, you know, what do I need to know about private equity or litigation before I start my training contract? Now, these things together, really the goal is to kind of build TCLA for the future trainee/trainee, you know, field. So making sure that as people start their legal careers, they have a place where they can ask questions, and if they're in a difficult situation with their supervisor, they can just ask it anonymously, and they won't feel alone in doing so. So yeah, I'm really, you know, I'm excited about it. It's I don't know how it's going to turn out at this stage, because it's like starting up a new community, but it feels like it's the right stage for our business and aligned with this community goal that we're focusing on. And yeah, it's been really nice recently to speak to trainees that, you know, just need someone to turn to, and we just want to do that on a bigger scale with this community.
Yeah, no, and it will be a roaring success. I have every assurance, just knowing the way that you do things and what you've done to date. And, you know, as a business owner myself, how would you love to hear your thought? I would love to sort of maybe hear your thoughts on running a business as a solo founder. How do you personally leverage and manage your time effectively?
Yes, so I will plug my personal newsletter, which is jasonsnewsletter.substack.com. It's a free newsletter where I write about the process of building a business. I am a big believer in talking about the management of my time, because I'm sure you can relate to this. It's the kind of most precious resource that I have. And every single day you are making a trade-off between what's the right thing to work on today that's going to bring in the most impact for my business. And I guess a few things I've learned there in terms of how can I better manage my time. I think our default is to work on tasks that are urgent rather than important. So you have to be really proactive in identifying what maybe 3 tasks are the most important tasks that are going to bring about the most result for the business. And anything that isn't over those tasks, you have to either delegate or batch together or just not do for now. And that means that you can spend your week really getting so much more done than you ever thought was possible. So often I do this in kind of chunks. You may have read the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, which I'm always a big fan of because it completely changed my thinking about this. And it's just a case that you might think, especially coming from the working world, that you might think you need 9 to 5 to just sit at a computer at work. And my preference is to have blocks where you have focused work and then have an extended break. So I find that, say I have 2 hours to focus on the biggest thing I need to work on, that's going to take a lot of energy from me. I will do that and not do anything else, put my phone in a different room. I'm not allowed to work on any other task. And just as a side note, I had this distraction log that I kept recently, which was a way of reporting to myself if I ever was doing something that isn't the task I'd specified. And it's very eye-opening to see how easy it is just to check your phone or to check other things outside of the work that you're doing. So yeah, I use this time to really focus on that one single task. Then I have a break. Then I go back to the next biggest task. And it's nice to know that you don't need to then work crazy hours. Really, with the goal of managing time, it's this idea that you can get a lot more done in less time, and then you have time to do the things that you want to do. So yeah, those are some kind of initial points on how I'm, quite rigorous in managing my time.
Well, I think you make so many good points about how you manage time, otherwise time will manage you. And, it's the most expensive thing, but, it's the greatest currency. It's time is the only thing. We can make more money. We can always have time but being productive with your time, and that's the word productive, not busy. And I think you've mastered that art and gave some good articulation there about how you do that. I think people should really take stock from that. And it's just been so good having you on the show, Jaysen. So before we wrap up, what is the vision going forwards for TCLA?
Sure. So we've been on this journey recently that initially I was planning to make TCLA a big business, and I was always talking about, okay, how can we take this to the next level? And I don't know if you found this, but just this constant feeling that you need to be growing or getting to the next stage. And I've recently been on this journey myself, which is that kind of questioning that assumption that I need to always focus on growth, especially if it leads me to do things that aren't bringing me greater happiness. So the future of TCLA is very much aligned with community. And the question for us is, how can we deliver joy to the people around us, whether that's team members or the rest of the community? And that's really going to be our singular focus. So that's really simplified things. In the short term, that's building this future trainee community up. In the longer term, it's producing, better learning resources for both aspiring lawyers and future trainees. Longer term, the ultimate goal is to actually make our platform free. So we do charge at the moment a proportion of our services just to be able to fund, largely the amount of free resources that we have. But recently we've also been on this journey where we recognize there is a conflict there. And so, longer term, our plan is to build a sustainable business where we are generating money from organizations to fund the platform. And that can mean we can continue to do this excellent work, but also make sure it's accessible to as many people as possible.
Yeah, no, and it will be, and it has been, and will continue to be. And the fact that you talk about community, because I think gone are the days where people say, well, how many people work for you or how big is your business? It really doesn't matter. And, people will come and leave your business, come and go out of your business, and that's fine. But people will stay within your community if they value your community. And the fact you have 50,000, active users, that's a community, and that's a pretty significant footprint of TCLA and, the journey you're on and where you're going. And it's just been an absolute pleasure hosting you today, Jaysen, learning about your journey and being so open and so authentic and what you're doing to give back and help the legal community. And I'm sure you've inspired a lot of our listeners around the world. So if people want to get in touch with you about anything we've discussed today, what's the best way for them to contact you? Feel free to also shout out any social media or web links, and we'll also share them with this episode for you too.
Yeah, perfect. So I'd say the best way to follow me and my journey of building TCLA is that newsletter. jasonsnewsletter.substack.com. You can find the TCLA forum just on the Corporate Law Academy, and probably the best way to reach out to me is through LinkedIn.
Yeah, no. Well, thank you so much. Definitely everyone make sure you sign up to that newsletter. Definitely connect with him on LinkedIn. Check out TCLA. They're only just getting started, even though they have a significant footprint already. So thanks so much for being on the show today, Jaysen. It's been an absolute pleasure having you and wishing you lots of continued success with TCLA and your wider pursuits. But from all of us on the Legally Speaking podcast for now, over and out. This week's review comes from Angleston. Perfect for law students. 5 stars. Rob is a thoroughly engaging host who gets the best out of all his guests, makes for fascinating listening and very informative on all aspects that a law student would look for. Applications, commercial awareness, life as a lawyer, etc. I think it also makes law seem more approachable in the sense that all the guests seem to be easy to talk to and enthusiastic about things outside of the law as well. Law firm partners seem to be a lot less scary when you've heard them talk, and about their former life as a DJ. All round great podcast. Thank you so much, Angleston, for your kind words and informative review. From all of us at Legally Speaking Podcast, we appreciate you.